give up, don't give up, don't give up, don't give up your day job.
Yes, yes, people. Welcome to Don't Give Up Your Day Job, the podcast dedicated to funny, honest, and sometimes pretty darn deep takes on the different jobs people have had to do in pursuit of their dreams. With me, James.
Me, Joey.
A.K.A.
The Bone Brothers.
The Bone Brothers.
Yeah, Fondue Central, real cheese.
We're still doing it. We're locked in. No going back now. But once again, it's not about us. Today, we are over the moon to be joined by a man who may just have some of the most famous vehicles on television at the moment. None other than the man himself, Josh Sivarajah, whose Black Defenders are some of the biggest stars on the global TV hit The Traitors. But Josh has carved a little niche for himself out in the TV industry. But beyond that, his own life story is arguably far more interesting. Mate, we are so pleased to see you again.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Good to see you, Josh. Thanks for coming
Cheers,
down,
guys.
mate.
It's a real honour, and obviously we got to know each other from us chancing it on a TV show ourselves, 007 Road to a Million. Shout out Road to a Million crew. What about that day?
I mean, well, I don't know if you can remember it because you slept most of the way, but what springs to mind, Josh, I don't know if you remember, like, we finished filming, we were looking to go home, and we're driving around the locks of the Highlands, and all of a sudden there's a bus crash, and we're trapped.
Yeah.
We're trapped.
Yeah.
And, I mean, Josh is doing us a world. We were actually scheduled, well, we were going to the Rolling Stones concert in Hyde Park on the Saturday.
I totally forgot about that because you were like properly like, we're not going to make it.
We were
not going to make it.
on the clock, mate, and like, you know, the guys, because we had to do a little cut in the morning on the Saturday morning, so that's why we were running
That's
late.
right. They had to
And
throw in some extra stuff. Yeah.
so they were like, no, we're going to get you done, and you kindly volunteered and said, like, this, look, I'll run them to the airport. You know, I'll get them down to Inverness Airport, no problem. Job's a good one. It was all going well. Sun was shining. And then we hit this traffic. And you were like, this doesn't usually happen. And a bus had basically overturned, didn't it? Going round a bend or something.
It's the thing with Scotland, like you can get on Google and kind of be told how long something's going to take. But 99% of the time, someone's going to lose a vehicle on a corner.
Yeah.
You were just unlucky enough that I think it was an oil tanker, but
That's
literally
it.
come off
on
that bend.
Bang on.
And we were sat there. I mean, even before that, it was so. It was a hectic show. I'm sure no one would mind me saying that, with it being season one as well.
Oh,
like
absolutely.
it was absolutely balls to the wall for that first week. I don't know how the rest of it was. But it was crazy. You know, some people were pulling 22-hour days, and then we got you in the car, and then that happened. But as someone who runs their own businesses, you just get to a point where you're like, it's not a problem, it's just a challenge. How do we get through this?
It just happens. You just find a solution
Yeah,
to whatever
totally.
comes forth.
Like, you know, there's no point stressing about it. I had a house that you could stay in, and it just seemed like the right thing to do. Get you to mine, take a drive there, and then you could get up and get back on the road.
I mean, it's not a bad place to go sightseeing.
No,
the
it's
Scottish
all right, isn't it?
Islands, is it?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
it was
yeah,
beautiful where we were. And
Yeah.
You know, we had a fantastic tour guide. Someone who lives up there, and you know, you gave us the full insight of what's what, and we went for a nice meal. What was that area that we stopped with and had a meal?
Was it Glencoe?
It was on the show. It was on the two, the father and son.
Beautiful.
Was it?
Yeah, they were on the show. They were doing like
Okay.
a rafting or a kayaking thing on there. It was literally on the show.
The seafood restaurant.
I remember, yeah. We went, that was just round the corner from Glencoe, Three Sisters Way. That area is absolutely beautiful,
Yeah,
but
it really was.
I mean, you got spoilt.
Yeah, mate.
You really did. Like, I mean, I remember chatting to the crew before you guys even arrived, and I'm not trying to blow smoke up your asses, but they were absolutely like, these guys are amazing. They're so good on camera.
Shout
like,
out
it's
72.
just,
Nice one, 72.
And they were super excited to have you. And for me, it was a completely new job. Like, we'd just done season one of The Traitors. I'd never really done any sort of TV work like that before. Then when the studio asked me to do the show you guys were on, it was unit driving, and I just said yes. Again, never ever having done it before. And I even remember that first morning coming down and picking you up and just thinking, these guys must be absolutely buzzing. Like, just brought to Scotland, have no idea what's going on.
100%.
And
mate, it was. Do you know what? Also, before we go, we got to give a shout out to Nero.
Yeah.
Who we're going to talk a lot more about during the podcast. 'cause
Yeah,
Josh's
he's,
dog Nero's in here, so if we're like this on camera,
If
we're
you
not
hear
doing anything
footsteps,
untoward.
yeah.
Nero has played a fundamental role in Josh's own journey, which we will get towards. But mate, do you know what? Obviously, I think we were the first pair to be filmed on that show. I think we would have.
I feel like you were, because where did they start you from? Was it on the bus in the car park?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the point
Yeah.
is, so, I mean, it is literally, like you say, it was a brand new show.
Yeah.
Obviously, the guys had done recce's and everything like that, but
Yeah.
there's nothing like, it doesn't compare to the actual real McCoy when you're actually filming and stuff
For
like
sure.
that. So everyone is, we haven't got a clue what's going on, and everyone's just feeling their
Mate,
way
I
through
had
it.
no idea.
Everyone's learning on the job.
I had 4 staff I'd never really met before. I'd explained to them we were there and they were representing my brand. And on that day in the morning, everyone's good to go. I couldn't find one of my drivers. He'd buggered off to a burger van
Oh, wow.
and was just having some food on his own time. And I was like,
He don't miss a trick.
mate, come on.
First day, guy,
He's obviously
Yeah.
never taken advantage of TV
No,
catering
no,
for the
it's like,
first
oh,
time.
this is nice.
Yeah. Do you know what? It's a good insight though, because I think a lot of people that have never been involved in a TV show, whether they've been on it or whether they've worked on a set, they look at TV and they think it's out and out glam. And
Yeah.
it often couldn't be further
it
from
really
the truth. Does
isn't.
it? It's
It
a
really-
proper
it
The
really-
polish is
really
applied
ain't.
in editing.
Yeah,
You know,
100%. Or the premiere and stuff
Yeah.
that we were lucky enough to get to. That's
Yeah.
like the other side of it. But like the it's down and dirty, isn't it? It's
mate,
really
honestly,
graft,
like watching you guys leave that phone box and just go up the mountain. And obviously,
Never to be seen again.
It's like they're on their own, and there's 20 people around you following you up a mountain, and you're like, "This is amazing!" Like, it was
we're
so
trying to get a few
good.
tips from them. Like,
Yeah.
any ideas where we're going? Yeah, do you know what? I mean, it was a while ago now. That's nearly not far away from 2 years ago now. But it seems such almost a different lifetime, like the way things just sort of thing. And look at us now; it's just a roundabout way that we ended up in the same room.
Puppy down.
It's really great to see you, man. Let's get into your story then, because we did have that day where we finished early. We were going to go to the airport. It was a 3 or 4 hour drive to the airport, and it ended up being a whole day together where we basically got everyone's life story in one, and it was just a fantastic. We
was
feel like
great.
you really get
Like,
to know people, didn't you?
Chatting to you then, like in the car when you was driving. I mean, I remember one of the things I said was you were doing like a little backstretch and all that. And obviously, where I drive a cab, I was like, "You're getting tired," and you're like, "A little bit." I remember that trying to just wake yourself up, sort of thing. But yeah, we were chatting. You were snoring.
Yeah.
It was, and I thought
We had
this
climbed
is-
the mountain a couple
This is
of
an interesting
I put
guy.
up with him for a couple of days.
Real interesting guy, and now we want to hear it. Like tell the world.
So, mate, let's go back, because you've done so many different stuff, and you are like the perfect example of say yes to things and see where you go. You got an idea, let's go. Like, where did you grow up to start with, and like how was that sort of the early part of your life? Like?
It's funny, this is something that I'm kind of exploring more with my counsellor at the moment as well. And it's really interesting to start understanding how much your childhood and your upbringing and your conditioning lines you up for the rest of your life. Like, and for me, I was born into a multicultural family. My dad's Malaysian Indian, mum's English. But with that upbringing, it came with a lot of challenges. My dad was a very violent person.
Right.
And my mum was in a very traumatic relationship with that person as well. And yeah, it's funny to kind of look back at that time in my life and the family values that I was getting taught and the things I was having to deal with and how my brain was kind of almost being formed in those early years on how I dealt with stuff. And it's probably why, or partially why I've got ADHD. So, you know, for me, the way that I operate now as an adult is that that way that I dealt with those traumas as a kid has really formed how I've grown up. You know, I grew up in Cambridge. I was really lucky to grow up in the South Cambridge. Again, only in the last few years, I've really come to appreciate how much privilege that brought me. Like, you don't have to be rich to I guess what I'm trying to say is you can grow up in a rich area like Great Shelford in Cambridge, poor, but you're being surrounded by rich people.
Yeah.
With rich ideas and better lifestyles, you know, upper middle class, and it's all those things that are just feeding in, man.
Yeah.
And you don't realise it's kind of happening, and then I guess, you know, through school, failed everything. You kind of, as you grow up, you wear your reputation almost like a cloak. You get told things about yourself. Oh, Josh is a bit of a joker. Oh, Josh never follows anything through. Oh, Josh is forgetful. You start you just like, okay, I'll play to that.
Yeah.
You know?
Which is the easy way out, isn't it?
Listen, in our own way, we spoke about this on the first episode just between me and Joe. Like, we had in our own way, similar experiences with our own schooling. Like, Joe went to a really good grammar school, but struggled like academically and that. And I went to a pretty rough comprehensive on a middle of a council estate, but was one of the top groups. But you've got to it's about survival. You've got to messing around was almost like the making sure that you don't get your head kicked in.
100%. Yeah. It's there's definitely nature versus nurture there, and don't get me wrong. You know, as horrendous as some parts of my childhood were, I've got great memories of where I grew up and the friends I had at the time and the things that I did, and then. Yeah, just, I guess, to jump forwards a few years off the back of kind of failing everything. I went to uni the first time and dropped out after a month and started working in bars.
Right. What were you studying when you first went there?
Special effects and model making.
Right.
And is that still in Cambridge, or did you move on to...
Honestly, I think we'd need hours to explain the amount of things I tried to do, but it was a course in a place called Wisbeach, Isle College, and I did that... I actually completed that course in spatial design. Then I went to Ipswich to do special effects and model making. Right. Weirdly, some of the guys and girls that I did that course with ended up doing the first of the new James Bond movies.
Really?
Yeah, totally.
Wow. Things just go full circle.
Yeah.
They really do.
It really is. Like such a small world out there.
Yeah.
Really, really is.
Yeah, that was it. It was a time I kind of. I guess I look at my 20s and I was a bit like a headless chicken running around. I'd not been given some of the social training I needed as a child because of the way my dad was and the things that I was having to deal with to just deal with like normal relationships a lot of the time. And yeah, I guess they say you should always look back at a year or two ago and be like, oh, I've moved on. And I totally have, you know, but I wouldn't change it for the world. But there was definitely a big amount of escapism through my 20s where I just was... I think I woke up one day and I was 33 and I calculated I'd been hungover for 4 years. Do you know what I mean?
It's
just your entire 20s, just like drinking, having a great time, dropping out of uni, doing all these things.
No structure,
and it doesn't matter because you still think you're young, and we can sort that out tomorrow. We can. You know, I'm young enough to keep going. Before you know it, you're the other side of 30, and it's like, whoa, hold on a minute. Like things are going too quick.
The more you look into things, though, as an individual, the more you become, introspective to yourself and stuff. But then looking outside, it's really quite a common story. And one of the good things about this era is a lot more people are actually owning it, I guess, in their own way. So which is helpful for your personal development, but also just the fact that we're sitting around here as three lads, really, just able to have a conversation about any and anything. Do you know what I mean?
I think when the more you talk about stuff that has been in your past that's affected you massively, you take the power away from it.
Yeah.
You know, we put a lot of energy into pretending we're all right. when a lot of the time now someone goes, "You all right?" I'm like, "No, I'm having a shit day."
Yeah.
I don't mind. So,
Like I say, own it.
you asked.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to sit here and talk about
Especially
it.
especially if you've done 22 hours on a TV show. Your driver's done 15 hours and he got to drive somewhere.
Yeah,
Brilliant, man.
It was cool, and I bounced around a lot through my 20s. Ended up having more issues like with my dad. So there was a really bad time. I think I was 21 and I went out to Malaysia to spend time with my family out there, and it wasn't going well. And I got on the phone to my dad and he went, I'm ashamed of you.
Oh.
Don't call me father. You're not welcome on my house.
No,
I had no money. No one talked to me for a month in Malaysia, my own family. And it was just this like absolutely world crumbling thing. You know, they say a lot of the time when it comes to things like depression and stuff that the reason why we kind of go down that route is we lose a big part of our identity. Yeah. And a big part of our identity is our parents. So when we're let down in such a huge way at any point in our lives, you know, it can really make you question who you are. Yeah. And I remember coming back and there were the hardest points. I remember certain things, like I remember walking into a shop to buy a Walkman, and the guy coming up to me, and this was like a month after I've got back from Malaysia, of seeing my family, and I started crying, and I had no idea why, but I was that judged for so long by people that were meant to care for me.
Yeah. That
I felt judged by everyone in any situation.
Which the more you look into it now, you realise like it's basically like, you know, it's whether it's family or friends or colleagues or whatever, it's a projection of their own self onto you a lot of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, it's you know, people joke about like Asian kids and doctors and lawyers and stuff like that, but it's so true.
Yeah.
You know, it really is for that segment of society. Well, what I've experienced myself, and it was very hard for me for a very long time to know that I was a disappointment to probably more my dad than my mum, just through dropping out of stuff and probably him seeing his brothers and sisters' kids doing it, you know, the lawyers, the doctors,
lot of comparisons in there
proper
between
academic,
families.
but also growing up in Asia, where you're more academically inclined than you are maybe over here.
Also, like I think, you know, which is really important to touch on because you've mentioned it already, is at that time, things like ADHD, dyslexia, any sort of hyperactive in schools. You know, you would have that wasn't acknowledged as something that actually, you know, he might struggle or she might struggle with focus in this area, but look at what they might be able to do somewhere else. You were basically the troublemaker in the class.
I think, I think for me growing up at that age, you know, it was a badge that you were maybe given. I wasn't diagnosed with ADHD. I was diagnosed with dyslexia, but again, it was like, oh, this is why you're shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
and we've got, you know, through no fault of like teachers or anything, because they could have a hard gig, but we've got 25 other kids that we kind of need to.
Yeah, and it's easier for us to teach them than it is you. So you just sit at the back of the class and, you know, just do
the
what
language
you
I think is wrong, and it's still maybe things have changed. You know, I can't say I've spoke to, you know, but like you should be calling a parent and going, "Hey, Mrs. Reed, we've done some tests and it's good news. You've given birth to an entrepreneur. He's got ADHD and he's going to do really well. But
channel that in the right way.
We need to jump on that now.
Yeah.
He's got some kryptonite that we need to deal with. Yeah. He's got a shit memory. He's always going to have a shit memory short term. He's going to deal with these things that he can't do. He's going to get bored at doing the same thing all day, every day. So we've got to figure out a way for him to do different things that he's going to be good at. But that's not what happened.
Nah. It's one of them things. I mean, hopefully now I think it is, you know, there's a lot more emphasis on those situations now where people don't. But you know, certainly like I guess our generation's the ones before and kind of like the guinea pigs in a lot of ways.
How old are you guys?
I'm 37.
44.
Yeah.
So I think you're sandwiched in between somehow.
No, I'm 44 this
Oh,
year.
you're 44. Happy day. So I remember you saying before, I know you sort of been in and around the UK quite a bit, so you sort of been to Ipswich. Did you not end up down in, was it Bournemouth? Way that you ended
I
up
did.
in?
So, I mean, just to kind of jump through, yeah, I did the uni the first time, dropped out, went to Malaysia, had a bad time with family, started having those panic attacks, came back to Cambridge. And a friend of mine was working at the local hospital, Adam Brooks. And I remember him saying, they're looking for ward assistants. And I had no idea what I was doing. So I just applied for a job.
As you say, you just said yes.
You just said yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I ended up going and working at Adam Brooks for the best part of 5 or 6 years. And started as a ward assistant. Did that for a few years and then applied to do a degree in clinical physiology that was paid for by the hospital.
Right.
And this was very much still at a time when I guess I was looking for validation from other people, whether it was my family, especially with those experiences I had where, oh wow, I could get a job in a hospital. Like it's that almost that doctor thing, right?
Yeah.
And
I was going to say, based on what you said before.
I remember when my dad was alive and seeing him at a time when I was doing that course. So I got onto this thing where I was working in the hospital in the cardiac department, and I was also going to uni. And I remember going into this Asian food shop with my dad, and my dad chatting to the guy going, oh yeah, my son, he's a clinical physiologist. He diagnoses people with heart problems. And I was like, now I look back at it and I'm like, fuck, it really is so true. Holy shit. Like, honestly, and they don't even care if we're saving anyone. It's got nothing to do with that. It's prestige. It's all about prestige. Like, actually, like, helping people is probably 8th or 9th thing on the list.
I must say, I don't think it's just Asian parents,
No.
mate.
I heard that from a comedian, and it's so true. But like, it was, yeah. So I did a year in Cambridge as an access course.
Right.
And then I was going up to Westminster in London to do that access course. And then after a year, I was meant to start at Cambridge University to do the full degree. And I decided to apply for a job in Bournemouth that was basically the same thing. It was working and getting the qualification at the same time. And yeah, my mum drove me down. I was 25. It was 2005. Dropped me at the hospital. And I remember driving off and me thinking, what the fuck am I doing now? Like, again.
I was about to say.
4 weeks ago, you had a job, you were around all your friends, and now you're in another town.
Yeah.
You know, and
I was about to say, like, during that whole period, like, you're working on the ward and you're doing that. Did you feel settled? Like, were you thinking, like, I don't really want to do this, but I'm keeping
my mum and dad happy.
It's
honestly, I was too hungover, all looking forward to the weekend.
Yeah.
I mean, I was drinking so much. Like sometimes I'd get to work at Adam Brooks, and I'd go and find a private room where there weren't any patients in, and I'd go to sleep for 4 hours. I'd be like, fuck it. I genuinely can't work. I'm too hungover.
It's like you're telling me my young
You're just ringing loads of bells here. You're just ringing loads of bells.
Some of the stupid shit, that you just do. Just like it was a great time. Don't get me wrong, and I wouldn't change it for the world. But I went to Bournemouth, and I was 25, and I was in Bournemouth for 10 years. I lasted 2 years. No, not even that. Maybe a year and a half doing that course still, and it just wasn't for me. Like, it just wasn't. It was too academic. Like, it was just weird. Like, I can see why I did it, but it was nothing to do with anything I was passionate about.
Like you say, you're trying to people please.
You really are, and I would look at people who worked within the NHS and what they would do, and it was like university, get your first job, work your way through the department, maybe go and get a better paying job at like in a sales company selling MRI machines, or it was all very structured, and I was like, I don't need that structure. I'm going to be dead in like 60 years time. I need a bit more like life going.
I need to know what's
I
not
need to
going
be
happen.
on the edge.
Yeah, exactly.
I need to get fired, and then I need to figure out what to do next.
Your which is like, your structure is not having the structure. If you see what I mean, like a little bit of it, a little bit of this, and a little bit of that. At that
Absolutely,
point,
to a point now where that we'll talk about that, but it's definitely something that I need a lot of variety to make sure I'm doing anything well. So Bournemouth for 10 years.
You went into sales, didn't you?
I did. Yeah. So I kind of I got fired from that. Like, I'm not going to lie. Like,
I mean,
it wasn't the first. It probably wasn't the last either. No, it definitely wasn't the last.
You definitely are telling me my last.
I decided that I quite like to have a go at sales.
Yes.
I went to work at a company called Reshaped in Bournemouth, and that was my first sales job. And I applied for an outbound sales job where I had to call people. I wanted to kind of test myself. I didn't want to have an inbound job where people were just calling me and wanting to buy something. Like, there's no challenge in that. So, yeah, I did that. I did that for 6 months, and then I decided I wanted to try and do some other stuff. So I kind of started asking around. I applied for a job working for a guy who was setting up a company selling data. So basically, we were the devil. We were selling people's data to companies.
GDPR. GDPR came for a
He
reason.
apologises now, everyone. Like, if you've ever been hacked or...
But I did that for 4 or 5 years. And I did it for a guy called Richard. And then after that, I did it for myself. Right. And that was the first time I kind of had a taste of like being a business person. Yeah. Being like, oh, it's all me. Yeah. And here's a thing that I think we all make mistakes with when we first start for ourselves, is we can be good at one thing. I can be good at sales, but starting your own business, there's about 1,000 other things that you need to be good at, right?
100%, mate.
And I very quickly realised I was shit at all of them. Like it was just a total level up. And that company failed, but it probably failed more because I was just never really interested in money. Like, I'd get a sale and I'd be like, oh, cool, I've got £1,000 in my account. I'll take 2 weeks off and go and get drunk.
Yeah, that's the thing. There's nothing like running out of money to remind yourself that you got to get back to work.
That's a proper incentive, isn't it? Like, shit, I'm totally skinned. I can't eat next week. I need to go back to work. Yeah.
It's one of those love-hate relationships. It's like, I look at people that are just kind of there. They're just like, they have a job, they get money, they don't spank it all. Everything's just kind of...
I'd love to be like that.
Just there in the middle, that. And I'm like, just peaks and troughs.
Yeah.
All the time. Yeah.
For sure, man. For sure.
So it was, so I worked for myself for a while and realised I was really shit at running a business. So ended up getting a job working for someone else in another sales job. And I got fired from that too. Again, it was just my brain doesn't work in a way where it can sustain doing one thing for a long period of time. It just doesn't.
Yeah, I'm with you.
If I want to learn something new, and people with ADHD will know this, if you want to hyperfocus, wow. Like, you can pick up a new skill. I wanted to teach myself 3D model making just before Christmas. So I sat down and I learned Fusion 360. I did a 60-hour course, and I just did it in like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then I was designing parts for my cars. I've got a 3D printer, I've got a CNC table, I've got a full workshop, and so it is one of those things.
But you've got to I think the thing with that is you've got to feel stimulated about what you do. Like, that's the central point, isn't it?
What's interesting, a friend of mine, he approached me recently about something that he does, and he was like, Josh, you know how you're really good at just learning new things all the time? Because it's the kind of stuff that I share. And he was like, well, if you do it with this, it's a really good way to make money. Yeah. Like, it's a really good thing to do. And I was like, you don't understand, mate.
I don't care
You just
about
don't
money.
understand. It's not the money. Like, if the subject
it's the
doesn't...
intrigue.
If the subject doesn't interest me, then what's the point in doing it?
100%.
Yeah,
but I mean, that, for all of, we talk about, I mean, that to me is like a perfectly normal way to be. Like, it's literally what we're talking about in the podcast, like, you know, finding something that you love and pursuing it, but that doesn't mean you're going to love it forever, even. It's one step, but what you might learn from that and might take you somewhere else. You see what I mean? And you go
People,
from
I
there,
think,
like,
always want to put you in a box. They want to be like, oh, he does this or he does
you know,
that.
or
and
I am this and
Yeah.
I am this forever, and that's not life. Like,
No.
that, you know what I mean? That's just not how it is.
You touched on it earlier.
Like,
You know, you're not here for a long time, so like make it a good time. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if you've got, I'm going to be dead in 60 years or whatever,
You know what,
then grab every day that you can.
I totally agree. I can't remember where I heard it, but someone said, like, if you're doing a job you don't like for like most of your life, it's like committing slow suicide.
yeah. It's a prison sentence, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? If you can't, I mean, obviously, listen, some people have got to do things for different reasons to get by. But if you have any like semblance of a choice about what you can do, I think always just ask yourself basic questions like what.
Or if you've got an itch, scratch it.
Even
Do
if
you
you're
know what I
doing,
mean? Like,
you know, you've got to
have a
pay
look.
bills. You're doing this. You might have to do it in the short term or even the longer term. But always ask yourself, what other interests do I have that I can build towards?
It's what we prioritise. And the
Yeah.
other thing is, like, you know, I totally get people have commitments and responsibilities, and kids is a big one. And,
Course.
you know, you've got these outside external pressures on you, you know, to provide or do whatever else you need to. But I do just find it really weird when people have no passions.
Yeah.
So weird, right? Like,
100%.
just work a 9 to 5, come home, watch EastEnders, and go sleep.
Job done.
It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
what?
It's you know, yeah. It's there's a lot of world out there.
I mean,
isn't there?
I've not maybe to your extent, but I've always been a bit like that. Like, you know what? Is this what I'm going to do for the rest of my life? But I used to think that I was the weirdo, that I was in the wrong. Like, people would say to me, like, when are you going to decide what you want to do? I'm like, well, I don't know. Like, you know, I went to college. I did the, you know, Sparky course. Got that. 23, 24. I then did the knowledge. I wanted to do something else.
Yeah.
I wasn't happy in what I was doing. And that's why I moved on. And all right, I haven't got loads of different things, but I've got 2 trades now that I can dip in and out of and fall back on. So in the long run, who's the winner?
And
You
also,
know?
you've also got, like, touch wood, a fair stretch of your life left to do other things
Yeah, of course.
if you want to.
Well, like start a podcast.
Yeah, like start a podcast. Like, which you know, sponsorship is available if anyone wants to like. But you know, that's it, isn't it? I think finding them things that intrigue you or interest you is part of the journey, and basically not being afraid to fall flat on your arse.
That's the word.
It's the one, isn't it?
That's the
Like,
word.
you know what I
Afraid.
mean?
You know,
Like,
like the amount of things that we talk ourselves out of because we're afraid of failure. And it, you know, again, looking back at my childhood, secondary school, university, growing up with kids that were academically fantastic. You know, they were high achievers, best sets, went through. They didn't experience failure. They didn't experience failure when they were at university. And then they went out into the world and they realised that just hitting targets wasn't the only thing that was going to get them to move forwards. Like, you had to go for an interview. You were going to fail. And that really hits people if
That
they
haven't
don't,
been experienced
if they
to it.
haven't had any
I hate
experience
some
to
hard,
it.
yeah, when you've been, mate, you know, I can tell you what. I mean, I had a very brief stint attempting stand-up comedy. I mean, once you've cleared, once you've cleared an entire room of people out at the Edinburgh Fringe 4 nights in a
Fair
row,
play.
you ain't afraid of failure anymore.
Wow.
Yeah, I had some good nights, but I also had some absolutely horrendous ones. So once you've done that, you're literally like,
You set yourself up. He's ready. He can handle failure.
there really ain't nothing else to worry about, and a few things more than that. But back to your story, because one of the things that you know, you built up a massive following online from it during the period. Obviously, you had that time in Bournemouth, but it was your travels when you obviously just got to a point where you said, you know what, fuck this. Like, I need to do something for me, and I guess get out there and live. And you and Nero went away.
Absolutely. You know, it was a kind of an amalgamation of things. I hit some really lows in my life, low points in my life in Bournemouth. And between that, not really understanding myself as a person, spending money I didn't have, getting in debt, sitting on the side of the road in tears, calling my mum up, asking her to bail me out, you know, just and 1,000 other things that I was so unaware of. But then you also throw in that little voice in the back of your head that's like, Josh, go and fucking do something else.
Yeah.
Just get up and
There's
go.
a big world out there.
There's a big... and as a kid, every year I'd go on holiday to my grandma's in the Peak District, and we'd go walks, exploring, and I was in the Cubs and the Scouts, and my summers were spent exploring the woods, just that's what I did, and I loved that. And as you get older, I think if we all actually sit down and pay attention to our past, there are certain things that follow us through our lives that we love.
100%.
And for me, one of those was that adventure. And I woke up on a Saturday in Bournemouth one day, and
Hungover?
oh my God, yeah, so bad.
Many great plans are made when you're hungover, mate.
100%.
Not a lot of them work,
No.
but this one did.
It did, and I woke up and I just knew if it got to the next weekend, it might just be another 10 years down the line, just waking up on a Saturday hungover again, and that, I guess, terrified me a little bit. Again, I was probably wearing the reputation of being a bit of a Bournemouth boy.
Yeah,
and
course.
again, I loved that for the period that it was, but I just decided I wanted to go, so I bought a bike on Gumtree for 250 quid that weekend. Went down to Halfords, bought a couple of panniers for £40. Wow. I think it was middle of July. I was renting a house, was full of all my stuff. Car was on the drive. Had other people renting rooms off me, and I just left, mate. I just
That
Just
takes
done
some
one.
bollocks.
I
That
just
takes
packed
some
those
bollocks as
bags
well,
and I
doesn't it?
buggered off on a Wednesday. And do you know what? Because of how many times I'd failed stuff, whether it was deciding I was going to do shabby chic furniture and spraying furniture that I'd go and pick up from the dump, or learning magic, or doing a course, or university, or whatever it was, I didn't want to tell people that I was leaving, because I didn't want it to be another thing that I didn't follow through on.
Yeah.
Which now doesn't bother me, actually, weirdly, if I don't follow through on something, because it's another thing I've explored.
Yeah.
That's the way.
You've reached a level of...
It's that perception of what not following through means to you.
100%.
So at the time, I got on my bike middle of the week. We left Bournemouth and started heading down the south coast towards Swanage with no real plan or idea.
Was Nero with you at that time, or did Nero...
Weirdly, I had 2 dogs with me.
Oh, wow.
I had Nero, and his son Barkley, who one of my best friends Tom now has, who's in Bournemouth, and we got about 5 miles outside of town, and Barkley got a limp. And I was just like, I called a mate and went, "Can you look after Barkley?" So Barkley went and stayed with my friends. And to cut a long story short, is still there, loving life, and that's cool.
Yeah,
it
He is
worked
a
out.
Bournemouth boy.
Exactly, 100%.
Gotcha.
But that was really the start, I would say, of what I would call my formative years.
Yeah.
I think guys take a little bit longer to grow up, and 34...
Yeah, my wife would say that we will never grow up.
That's why they call us old boys. But yeah, I left with Nero. We did the whole coast of the UK. So I went down to Cornwall, came round that bottom kind of leg of the UK.
Yeah.
Started going around Wales. I got down to Fishguard, and I remember just before I got there, I had a phone, and it was just, I don't know if it was just when you could do it, but you could make videos on your phone. And I did a video blog on the side of the road, and it was the first one I'd ever done. It was 30 seconds long. And I remember hearing a car coming, and I just, in my head, I was like, "You look like such a dick." And I just hit my phone. I was like, this person cannot see me talking to myself.
And look at us now.
I know, right? Exactly.
We've got that.
Bring it on, 3 cameras.
All the people that are walking down the road just talking into their phone now.
2024,
Mate,
baby.
it's mad. It's totally mad. But that was the start of me starting to vlog what I did.
Yeah.
And I posted that video and a couple of others, and then we crossed over to Ireland. I cycled the east coast of Ireland. I got a fisherman to take me from Ballycastle to Scotland on his boat with Nero, you know, and people started really showing me love. And that...
And would that be something that you hadn't really experienced before? Like you said, you had like a few with family, with your dad. Like, was you looking for a bit of like love from people, or?
Do you know what? It's interesting you say that, because it was only very recently that I realised I've been very... How can I put it? I've chosen my friends.
Yeah.
You know, they're not people I went to school with, or people I grew up with, or just, you know, I think that's something that can easily happen, isn't it? You can just
throw it in and...
Yeah, you know, 30 years later, because you were friends when you were 5, you're still friends.
Yeah.
Whereas I think because of my childhood, I kind of subconsciously went out and I found people with good morals that would call me out if I was being a dick, or they just had strong family units, you know, as well. And all these things only really, like literally weeks ago, I realised. Again, I was chatting to my counsellor, and it just hit me. And I was like, fuck, it's something I didn't have as a kid.
Yeah.
And on the road, when we were travelling around, it was such an education in how inherently kind people are.
Totally, 100%. I've travelled a lot myself, and like, you know, thrown into the deep end in like South America as a young, you know, taken in by people on my very first day, who lived in like the favelas and stuff like that, and I ended up just spending.
It's not being scared. It's
spending a couple of
open.
weeks with them, you know, and
it just
got
strangers,
went on
there's
forever.
saying for that, isn't there?
Yeah.
And people are inherently good, and I think also like the response that you would have got from people on a personal basis that you actually met on the way, and then also even like online from sharing your because people are seeing something that you, and I can speak personally when I see people like yourself people are seeing you do something that they want to do themselves in their own
You don't
way,
realise
you know?
you're dealing in a currency of inspiration at
totally.
all. And it wasn't... As I carried on doing that, I remember when I was having a lot of followers and all these things happening, and then I started getting people like messaging me going, "Oh, Josh, I want to do what you do. How do you get into it?" And it was like, well, I didn't get into
Just do it.
I just wanted to go on an adventure, so I got on a bike. Are you doing it for charity? No, I'm just doing it because I want to cycle on my bike with my dog. Like, I remember picking up my phone one day and I was on Lab Bible. Someone had just photographed me in the street, and I was, my mate messaged me and went, "I feel like you've been knighted," and I was like, "Yeah, it's pretty cool."
Yeah.
And the BBC picked it up, didn't you? Like, you were in on the
yeah.
BBC
So
studio?
we did. I mean, we did the whole coast of the UK, Scottish Islands. The amount of adventures I lived in 4 months, you know, most people will live in 5 to 10 years, and it was so humbling. Like, if I'd been invited to go onto the BBC before I did that trip, the way I would have thought about it was like, oh my God, what are people going to think about the way I look? Oh my God, what do I say? Oh, no. Do you know? Like, it was totally about me.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Whereas when I did that trip and I had all those experiences and I had all those kindnesses and I felt so humbled and privileged and blessed to do that, when I got that phone call to go onto the BBC, I was like, wow, I get to share my story.
That's it. Just share. That's it.
And I get to maybe help other people. And just, even thinking about it now, it just makes me feel amazing.
Brilliant, man.
You know?
Was that the moment? Like, obviously, you would have done a lot of thinking. You know, with one thing about a trip like that is it allows you to really delve into where you're at, where you might want to go next, like that sort of thing.
Find yourself.
Was that like a moment? I know you came back and you went to Brighton for a little bit, and you spent a year or two down there. Was that a moment where you kind of had a little bit of a release, and you maybe not put as much pressure on yourself, and in terms of the next journey, and just finding where you, because you ended up in Scotland
when I was on the road?
Yeah, like.
I think what trips like that teach you is, as long as you're warm, dry, and fed, everything's a bonus.
Yeah.
You know, and I had very little stress in my life. You know, it was I still had these horrendous, like my dad, that relationship was still horrendous. Like we'd been on and off for years. And as I say, I remember that time walking into that shop with him where he was like, my son, he's doing this, blah, blah, blah. And then me leaving Bournemouth. And I remember like telling him earlier in that week that I was thinking about doing it. And I woke up the morning that I decided to go. And I had a voicemail. And it was from my dad. And he went, I'm just so ashamed of what you're doing. And I don't agree with anything you're doing. And I don't want to speak to you ever again.
Wow.
And it was just like, fuck.
That's lucky because I'm off.
Yeah, I'm off.
Yeah, I'm not going to have a phone on me for the next
yeah.
But
I'm offline.
It was a very interesting period because as I carried on doing that trip, a lot of my family on my dad's side, who all live around the world, they were all started following me. Can you imagine?
Yeah,
like, they're all picking up the phone to my dad and going, I just saw Josh in the Daily Mail. I just saw Josh on TV.
It's human because all of a sudden...
Isn't it amazing what he's doing? And my dad's just sat there thinking, I'm a dickhead.
Because a big slice of humble pie, I'd imagine.
All of a sudden, and this is not to say anything against your family or anyone's family, or, people outside of your personal experience need to see often... through thoughts of their own, need to see some sort of validation in what you're doing for it to make sense to them. When the actual reality is, let someone live their journey.
Yeah.
Love is a weird thing.
Like,
you're not hurting anyone else. You're
it's-
not killing anyone. You didn't have any other responsibilities. You didn't have kids. You didn't leave anyone in the lurch.
No.
And life
if you've got to do it for yourself.
And life for the vast majority of people is not a linear journey. Like, you know what I mean? It's not a straight line. And for a lot of people who it is, they don't want it to be. They'd love to be able to do something like that, but can't necessarily find it within them.
I know that, and I don't mean it in a big-headed way, but I do know a lot of people lived through me when I was on that road, and I did a lot of videos because I loved sharing that. And honestly, some of the conversations I had when I came back and some of the things that I didn't know friends were going through, and they would talk to me about how my trip had helped them, and it was just like... it touches your soul, like it really does. And
you got video? Are they available? Or what can people like?
Yeah. I mean, my Nero and me. If you look up Nero and me on Facebook, it's still there. I haven't used it for a very long time, but all those videos from that trip are still there. And I think for my dad, he was a very complicated guy, and the thing is, we spent that trip doing the UK. We ended up on the BBC. Off of the back of that, I was then sponsored to cycle Europe. Yeah, so I remember I got dropped off in Calais again, van driving off, and me thinking, "What the fuck am I doing? Why have you done this?"
But now they're paying me, so I got it.
They're paying me. Yes, finally, belligerence has won.
Yeah, exactly.
So I got dropped off in Calais. I cycled all the way to Portugal. I did that whole trip. And again, there was so much love. Thousands and thousands of people dropping me like messages and saying how inspirational it was. But every 1% of the population or 0.1 who'd be like, "Oh, this guy's just a freeloader. He's just like, what's he doing?" I would hear my dad.
And is that the voices you can hear online? Like some you talking about comments?
I don't know if you've ever experienced anything like that, but the 1% always affects you more than the other.
As I said, mate, I cleared out an entire room of people 4 nights in a month. I'm having a share.
That was 100%. That wasn't one.
That was 4. That was 100% times 4 in a row. I know exactly what you're saying.
It was really interesting, and then I remember being in the tent one day somewhere, and people kept on going on about the Danube River in Germany, and like I should cycle it, and I just had way too much time on my hands and time thinking by myself, and I decided I'd paddleboard the Danube. Never paddleboarded before. Never paddleboarded before.
Just off the bat.
Yeah,
go for it.
Why haven't you applied to be on 007 Road to a Million? It'd been climbing
It put us to shame, wouldn't it? It smashed the life out of it.
Brilliant. So, mate, it's an incredible story, and it's something you should get it down in a book or something at some point if you haven't already. 'Cause
I
it's
mean,
a really, it's a real
you've
story.
got a book
Yeah, nah.
in you.
I was
without a
approached
doubt.
It's
by
a
a
real
literary
story.
agent, but the problem is, like, I think with the ADHD, you do struggle to sit down with one thing.
Yeah.
I think I'll probably get to a point where I might hopefully mellow a tiny bit, so I could do something like that.
Yeah,
Don't go changing, Josh.
No, I know. But yeah, I mean, Danube, we paddleboarded from Germany to Hungary.
Brilliant. I mean, that's
and-
fucking quality, man. That's brilliant.
I'll
It
tell
makes
you-
me want us to. It just makes like us to get out and do things.
I'll tell you
More
a
like
super
that.
interesting story about that. I was just in my tent when I was cycling somewhere in Portugal, and I wrote this sponsorship letter to, I think it was 6 of the biggest paddleboard companies in the world.
Yeah.
Yes, I remember you telling us
Yeah,
this in
and,
Scotland.
and I had 3 offers within a week, and I'd never used paddleboard in my life, and I was going to do it with my dog. But I got a phone call 3 days later from this guy, and he's like, Josh, me and my family have just sat down and read your blog. I live in California. I've just bought this company. And it turned out this guy, his name was Sean Toulon. He's got his own company now. You can look him up. But he was not the CEO, but the next one down of a company called TaylorMade, which is
way.
the golf
Yeah,
company.
golf
right?
company,
yeah.
I Googled him, and they made £2 billion that
Ask him
year.
if he
or
can
something.
send us a few golf balls.
Fucking, I'd rather have some lessons. if
We've
I was
lost,
listening.
we've lost enough of them. But,
But the thing was that guy had seen something in me that he saw in himself. Because as a kid, he wanted to set up a golf company with his best friend, who was the CEO. And he'd been told, just go and get a job. Just go to university. And that belligerence had taken him to the point where he was sponsoring Tiger Woods.
wow.
Yeah.
You know, and to have the people I connect with now in life, it's always about passion.
Yeah.
Like the other day, I bought another car I probably shouldn't have done, and I was at a petrol station, and this woman turned up in a Ferrari, and I just went over and I was like, I love your car.
Yeah.
It's so nice.
Common ground
It's
immediately.
beautiful.
Yeah, yeah.
But when you show people appreciation, it comes back
Yeah.
all the time. A lot of the time, we might look at someone like that and go, that's a bit nice, but I'm going to side-eye them. But that's about
yeah,
it.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
honestly, just go up. I go up to everybody.
Yeah, same.
Listen,
yeah.
it's nice to be nice.
It
isn't
so
It
is.
doesn't
You've got
cost
nothing to
anything
lose.
to
Yeah.
give someone a compliment. You know, praise someone if they've done something well. You know, just to say hello to someone in the morning.
Yeah.
Just to like brighten their day up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, you know, you're on that grind. Fucking, I've got to get that tube. I've got to get that train. I'm late for work. Just let someone out in traffic. Just, you know, say thank you. Smile,
move
you
on.
know.
Yeah, for sure.
Don't cost anything.
Let's not talk about traffic. 9 hours in the car down
No,
here.
fair play.
I
That
felt
is
really
your
guilty.
bugbear.
Yeah, I've got to say, coming down from the beautiful parts of Scotland that you live in, you as soon as you hit that outside of London,
Do you know what?
coming into day,
Honestly, I was just
Double
outside
the time.
London. I was like, these are the worst drivers I've ever seen in my life. And then I thought, no, it's not. It's because you've had to endure bad drivers for 9 hours on motors. Why do people drive in the middle lane?
That's
Like,
it, mate.
who
Yeah.
are those people? Like?
But we got before we got to get how you up in Scotland
Yeah.
and that kind of stuff because you know
yeah.
obviously that was our experience of you.
Absolutely.
Listen, nothing's easy. It's always a slog, which is part of life and part of the enjoyment of life as well. But you seem to have carved out like just a great setting for where you are now up in Scotland and stuff. So just let us know how that journey came to be. Really,
I've been
you know.
really lucky, you know. Like it's, I got back off paddleboarding the Danube. A friend of mine had inherited a hotel in Brighton. And he was like, "Oh, Josh, why don't you come and run it for me, or like just work on reception for a couple of days a week, figure out what you want to do next." And I remember getting there the first night, and literally the front door was kicked in. There were like 3 drug dealers in the buildings. Like it was about as bad a hotel as you could possibly get. Imagine I've just been on this 2 years zen,
Yeah.
and then
Reality
it's
check.
like, boom, welcome to Brighton. Someone's shitting on your doorstep.
Saturday night in Brighton. Yeah, damn right. Yeah.
So I did that for 2 years, and I got a random phone call one day from my mum, and she's like, "Oh, I'm thinking about buying another property," and I very offhandedly went, "Oh, why don't we buy a hotel in Scotland?" And I remember exactly where I was, walking down the road, and then off of the back of that, I basically ended up going up to Scotland to have a look at the hotel I've got now, because I googled the cheapest places in Scotland that you could buy, and I bought a 14-bedroom Victorian beach house for 169
Oh,
grand.
mate, and I'll tell you what, the set, like you talk
Which
about
is the one where we stayed.
Where
isn't
you
it?
stayed,
Yeah,
yeah.
You
yeah,
struggle-
which is absolutely amazing. By the way.
Yeah.
What's the name of it?
Victoria House.
Victoria House, and in Dunoon.
Yes.
So,
So
guys, Google that and.
So what happened was the place was up for auction, and I went up to have a look at it. And my mum, she's living abroad. She, you know, as much as I might have said that my childhood was pretty bad in some aspects, like my mum's been a huge inspiration to me. You know, she had a very, very, very tough 20s, I guess you'd call it, bringing up 3 boys, abusive husband, a whole load of other shit going on, and she went to university. She
Hats off to her.
she did, and you know what? She dragged us up, and she did her own thing, and she taught me that you don't have to get stuck in a rut. You know, she qualified from Cambridge University, worked in Cambridge for 5 years, and then started working around the world.
Fantastic.
And
Great, good on her, mate.
yeah,
Good on her.
she's worked all over the world, and she called me. I think she was living in Turkey or somewhere at the time. Was like, I'm thinking about buying another place. So I go up and see this place, and it's on auction. We can't raise a mortgage, and I was just like, right, well, just tell them we'll get them the money in a month, and I'll go and move up and move in with them.
Wow.
Mate, I moved in with the owners
Really?
with no idea how we were going to get any money.
So was it quite? Was it?
It's that yes mentality
Sounds
again.
like-
Just, get
Just
in
do
there.
it.
Yeah.
What's the worst that could happen?
Yeah.
You don't get the money, and you've
You
had
get
a
kicked
nice
out.
stay in a
Yeah,
hotel
you
for
had
4
it.
weeks.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they never actually invited you, did they? You just sort of.
So
Brilliant.
that was it. It was. Oh, it's mad how many weird things I've done like that. But like, yeah, I moved into this hotel with the previous owners. We had it up and running, and I was running it within 2 weeks, and they were just around.
Right.
And then we managed to get the money after 2.5 months. So
Ain't
you
bad
can,
going.
bad
you
going,
can
mate.
imagine,
Going,
you
it's
can
all right.
imagine how that was
Yeah, yeah.
slightly awkward
That's
for
your-
a few weeks.
That's your old sales mentality coming in.
But again, yeah, it's all those things that you learn through your life.
Which you think I always say this. I always go back like things like jobs that you've done that you hated, or periods of your life that you feel like I'm in the shit here. Like, and they are the most in the long run. They're the things that really make you, and you can really
Totally.
pull from them all.
Absolutely.
Like, you know, they really set you up for easier times, or times when you have got a bit of structure and you've got a bit of direction, and they just educate you.
Working in sales and working in hospitals and paying attention to those things really taught me how to be able to manipulate conversations, not in a bad way, but like I could meet you in the street and within 5 minutes feel like we're best mates. Yeah. And I'm not doing that because I'm trying to do anything bad. It's just that I want to, let's get this started.
Yeah,
you know?
let's feel something.
And,
Yeah, for sure.
Those skills really do help you.
Yeah.
My partner's the total opposite. So when we go out, she's like, Josh, stop fucking talking.
This is our
strangers."
time.
Yeah. That we're at this table.
Opposites
Yeah, yeah,
attract,
yeah.
mate.
Oh, they really do.
That's
They really do.
You need a little
Yeah.
bit of balance in life,
Yeah.
for sure. And then just to wrap up, then you've obviously got the Defenders as well. That was something that came after the.
Well,
got the
I mean,
hotel,
obviously, you're a car fanatic.
Car enthusiast.
Do you know what's funny? I didn't pass my driver's license till I was 33.
Wow.
So
Didn't need to. You had your bike.
I didn't need to, yes. I just cycled the world, just carried the dog around. But when I moved up to Scotland, we took on this hotel, and there was a reason why it was that cheap. It was bad. It was probably a couple of years from derelict. So I had to learn how to plumb, do electrics, basically anything that didn't need signing off immediately, or that end part of the process, I would learn to do, tiling or whatever it was. But then I also had to be good at the business side. You know, those things that I was aware that I hadn't been good at in the past. And we ran it as a hotel for 3 years. Then COVID hit. And I remember when we had the opportunity to start trading again, the fear that had been injected into the country was so massive that no one wanted to share a space with other people. And that's when I decided to do 2 things. One was stop running the hotel as a hotel and turn it into a house. And that was an absolute game changer. I went from having to need 15 staff to 3 cleaners once a week. So that was a big one. And the way that business has now developed, you know, that's been good. Definitely not without struggles. But the other thing was, the bounce back loans came in. So these were the loans that you could take out for businesses.
Yeah.
And because I had, I put myself on a wage for the hotel, but I hadn't paid myself like 15 grand of my wages. So I just took this loan and paid myself legally all the money that I was owed. Yeah. Drove down south, bought a second Land Rover, and said, "Oh, I'm going to set up a vehicle hire company," never having run one before. I had no idea. And within 3 weeks, I was hiring out Land Rovers.
And was that for like? Was that just for like people doing trips and expeditions?
So that's what we do.
Yeah, that's Wandering Icons.
I want to say predominantly, but we've ended up doing a lot of TV work. So that's how Wandering Icons was born.
Yeah.
We went through some really difficult times. You know, I lost 2 Land Rovers in 2 days, completely written off. Yeah. So that
I remember you saying about
that. And these are the things that teach you just how much bounce back you got.
Yeah.
You know that get knocked down 7 times, get up 8. It's
well, you got to have it, mate. I mean, like
you don't have a choice.
When you're running your own business, without a doubt,
you don't have a choice.
You need to be able. You're going to hit the shit at some point.
You know, you've got a partner, and there are times where I'll mention something to Bar 2 months down the line about something absolutely horrendous that happened during work, and she'll be like, "You didn't tell me that," and I'll be like, "That was just like one of 4 things that happened."
Yeah. You know, they'll say that we do it, but without a doubt, women have the best selective hearing.
But also, you know what I mean. At the same time, you also had bookings coming in. Like, you know, you've got a customer base. So you have built a business by that point. You know, so it is.
But it was building businesses through passion.
Yeah.
You know, through looking at that, you know, talking about those things that you look back at and see what follows you through your life. It was that adventure, and to be able to share that with other people, have them come up to Scotland. But also, I mean, I get to buy toys pretty much like a lot of toys.
And I know you like your cars.
You know, I went and I couldn't sleep last Thursday morning, woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning and I was on eBay and I ended up buying Classic Mini.
Yeah. Martin, is it Martin? I've been watching it on Facebook. I've been watching it unfold on Facebook.
So, you know, but the thing is now, as I grow up and I look at my ADHD and the way that I have to operate, I don't feel guilty anymore because every time I buy an asset, that's what it is.
Yeah, totally.
It's like, how can I buy that and not pay for it?
Yeah.
That's what I'm driven by. I'm not driven by work. I'm not driven by money,
making loads of profit. If it comes in, great.
You know, I wanted to. I was talking about the CNC table and the 3D printer. The you know, things that I've taught myself. CNC table. I bought that 2 months before Christmas because I didn't want to pay to have campervan furniture made for Wandering Icons. It's like $2,000 for like simple plywood stuff, right? So I taught myself how to do it. 3 weeks before Christmas, I put a post up saying, "I'm making cheese boards for £50. And I know people are looking at me like, "What is Josh doing? What on earth is he doing now? He's got like these 2 businesses. Why is he making cheese boards?" 3 weeks, I made $2,500 and paid for that table.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I was getting paid. It's all about the hustle. It's all about the angle. It's Traitors. It's the show Road to a Million. All these things. When I get those phone calls and people go, "Oh, hi, do you do unit driving? Do you rent out for movies? Do you have 5 black Land Rovers?" "No, I've got 2 white ones, but I'm going to say yes." I'm going to put the phone down and then I'm going to think, how the fuck am I going to do this? And you have to just give yourself that opportunity.
Right. You're right.
You certainly have done that. I mean, it's amazing. We could sit here for hours.
I think that's the perfect place to wrap it up. You know, you've got to give yourself the opportunity. You've got to make it happen.
You do. I would say the same thing to anyone. You know, even if you have a full-time job, you've got kids, if you have a passion, if there's something you want to do, just give yourself half an hour a week.
Yeah.
You know, just find a way to build that platform to take a dive off in the next few years.
And on that note, so we ask every guest, like, obviously we were on Road to a Million and I chose James, being my brother, knew he would be ideal partner. So if you were to do Road to a Million and head up mountains, who would be your partner in crime?
I'd 100% take my partner bar,
Cool.
because we're so
Brownie
different.
points,
I
Josh.
know, I know.
Brownie
Like,
points, Josh.
I was
You're good.
lining
You're-
that up.
You're
I
a
was
good
like-
man, yeah. Teed
I
that
was
up
like,
nicely.
in my head, I was like, don't even hesitate. Answer immediately, otherwise you will never be able to
Hayley,
live
I'm
that
sorry
down.
I didn't
This will
take
be
you.
good,
I'm
I
still
like
in
that.
trouble for that, I know.
Delphine, I never had a choice anyway. So,
But yeah, go on, please tell us why.
Because we're so different. She is the academic, she's the level-headed one. She is the one that knows how to make a plan. She is the yin to my yang, I guess, at the end of the day,
perfect.
you know. And every relationship I've ever had before her, I was lucky if it lasted 6 months. And there's a reason we've been together for over 5 years. And it's that, what you say, it's that complementary aspect to it. And it's that mutual respect. It's the fact that I could call her on a Tuesday afternoon when she's at work and go, I'm going to go for a drive and I'll be back in a few days. And she'll be like,
let you be.
have a good time.
Yeah,
I can wake
I mean-
up on a Wednesday morning and go, I just bought a classic Mini at 2:00 in the morning because you weren't there to tell me. Not that she would, but, and she'll be like, cool, let's go and get it.
Yeah.
You know, and I love that.
it's a
about
great
our
feeling.
relationship.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Mine in relationship isn't quite as extreme as going out and buying, but I know exactly what you mean.
So it gets
Like,
harder and harder
I know-
to test her.
I know exactly what
You
you
know?
mean. It's such a support network
Yeah.
where you've got these crazy
Yeah.
ideas of doing things. And it's
You need people
tremendous,
that
man.
will
Like,
enable you and not say, but what if?
and vice versa as well. And
Yeah.
it's a friendship, isn't it? But
It's a two-way thing,
Yeah,
you
for
know,
sure.
and I've really tried to, you know, encourage her to. I guess we try and encourage. We're a bit more of each other now,
Yeah.
as opposed to
Yeah.
me just being completely off the wall and her being more kind of doing the adulting.
Yeah,
you know,
totally.
I'm trying to do a bit of adulting now.
But don't do too much,
Yeah,
mate.
no, not too much. That's
Because
fine.
you're here for a reason.
Don't you worry.
No, but, mate, it's been so great to see you again, man. It's been a
No,
real
it's been a
pleasure.
pleasure.
Thanks so
Lovely
much.
to see you, mate.
Cheers, guys.
Josh Sivarajah, don't give up your day job. Cheers, guys.
See you next step.
Don't give up. Don't give up. Don't give up. Don't give up. Your day job.